Hey, here we go again. Multiblind podcast, episode 2, back by popular demand. And by that I mean one whole person watched the last one the whole way through to the end. So thank you, one person. Either that or they switched it on and forgot about it and walked away. But to be honest, I don't really care which way around it is. That was unexpected anyway. Several people switched it on and got to the end by kind of frantically clicking and skipping. So I don't know what was going on there. Did they really desperately just want to see my result, or were they just really hoping it was going to get good at some point? Who knows? But yeah, we're going to do more of the same this time. So still not really totally sure what this is going to be. Uh, Kind of feels massively self-indulgent compared to the other stuff that I do, but I'm kind of happy with it being that. I'm just trying to find multiple uses for all of the footage and things that I'm recording, and if I can talk a little bit about the kind of training tools and techniques that I'm using for this and maybe relate it back to the stuff that I'm doing in my everyday life, in my job, when I'm working with either athletes or people with injuries or working with mental health, then all the better. Sometimes a 15-second Instagram reel's the way to share it. Sometimes it's in a longer form thing with multiple tangents. I don't really know. I don't know what's going to be best, but we're going to try them out, all of them, and see how we go. So this was the Portuguese National Championships in a place called Oliveira de Azimais, which I may or may not have pronounced correctly, somewhere in Portugal, basically. And pretty fun competition. This was my first time going away to somewhere that's outside the UK and Ireland. So I've done kind of my first competitions were all in Ireland, then started mixing it up between different places in the UK, and this was the first time I got to go somewhere else. And I definitely can't recommend that enough. So it's a really fun experience to just see like what's the similarities and differences between different countries, etc. Meet new people, and Portugal was definitely a good choice for a first one. Everybody here was super friendly, super nice. If you're English speaking, they did all the announcements in Portuguese and English, which, you know, I wasn't expecting that they would have to do that, but it's quite nice to keep your stress levels down when you're not trying to interpret where you're supposed to be and which round we're on and stuff like that. That was just mega helpful. So big thanks to all of the competition organizers and everybody that was there, really, because this was a fun competition. Kind of annoyed, actually, it took so long, like 4 maybe 5 years to actually get to the point of going to another country to compete. It had been something I wanted to do, so everything that I do in my life anyway takes so long to just get organized. I started cubing in 2011, and it took me till 2019 to go to my first competition, because I just assumed from like my work in gymnastics, when people go to competitions, it's because they're at this crazy high level. So in my head, I kind of equated it as, unless you're in the top 10 in the world, it's not worth attending a competition, and took quite a long time to get over that hurdle in my head, and then turned up and everything was just kind of fine. There was really, really great people, and there was loads of people around my level, and it was all super comfortable. And then the same thing with going abroad. I actually tried to do this in 2020. I pretty much booked out once I saw how much fun competitions were in general. I decided every weekend I was going to try and hit one in 2020, and booked out probably for the first 6 months. Had just tons of comps lined up. Was going to go to whichever one it was. It was either the European Championships or the World Championships that was in the Netherlands. I think European. Somebody let me know if I'm wrong. One guy who watched the last one. You're going to be my fact checker for today. And yeah, had them all booked up, lined up, got to maybe 2 comps, and then obviously that big thing happened. And that was kind of nice for me personally and financially, because I had already paid for all my flights, I'd already paid for all my hotels, I'd already paid all the competition sign-up fees. And so going through 2020, having paid out all this money that was gradually getting refunded, kind of helped keep me a bit afloat. So I guess silver linings and all that. I think the competitions refunded the entry fees pretty quickly. The hotels kind of refunded it a bit later, but that was another month or two down the line. And then the airlines tried to hold on to it for as long as they possibly could. So all of that came back last. So it was a nice little payment plan for 2020. But I think I would have preferred to go to the competitions, actually. And after that, never really gave it much thought. Always thought, you know, when you don't understand how the transport works, when you don't understand how everything there works, are you going to get hit with like city tax when you turn up to a hotel? Is there going to be intricacies around buying travel cards and stuff like that that you're just not aware of? So I sort of just held off on going to other competitions. And it was only that I was supposed to go to a competition in Dublin in August, and I worked out that the price for one night of accommodation and travel to and from Dublin from London in August would cost the same amount as spending an entire week in Portugal. That I just figured, okay, well, this is clearly the better option. So we had a bit of time in this bit, Oliveira, Jezumais, and we then also had some time in Porto and got to see that. So actually, cost-wise, worked out really, really well, and I will definitely be trying to get away to more competitions. In fact, I already did. I'm recording this video quite late because unfortunately, when we went to Porto, decided to go to the beach, got water in the charging port of my phone, and yeah, wasn't able to extract all of the videos that I'd taken. So since the Portugal comp, I went to Sweden, I went to Poland, had the UK Championships, had quite a few extra competitions and footage that I was going to do something like this, going to share it. And all of it ended up being wiped. So I don't know if there's a lesson there for cubers, but back up your stuff more than you think you need to, because everybody knows to do that, but they don't always do it. I had a lot of stuff, like my work stuff from my phone was backed up, but I took some of the other things, all the cubing footage, for granted, just because it takes so long to transfer big video files like this that it wasn't really worth it. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about the competition. Not a huge amount different, like when it comes to different countries, different competitions. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff that's really the same. One of my favorite things that I saw here that I hadn't seen anywhere else before this point was not just having a cube store at the comp, but having a merch store as well. There was a guy kind of had a bunch of t-shirts, hoodies, bags, all of those kinds of things, and I really liked that. I really wanted to buy one of the hoodies. They were looked pretty cool. Only didn't because obviously when we're staying a week, all of my luggage was packed up with clothes. I couldn't really justify bringing something extra back, but I kind of do find like if I was going to a competition and if I wanted to spend some money, usually for me it's not going to be on an extra puzzle because I've already bought all the ones that I need. So I'm kind of very much into the idea of merchant accessories and just other slightly less essential things so that you can buy and take home souvenirs from competitions. If any other countries would like to get on that, that would be pretty cool. Maybe some others do. One guy fact check me. Let me know, is this happening anywhere else or is it only Portugal? I know at the UK Championships there was somebody selling t-shirts as well. And once again, I couldn't take advantage of it because I had committed to moving house and I didn't have any more space for stuff. So next time, though, next time I see some merch, I think I would like to pick some up. So I haven't really spoken anything cubing related, and I'm already on the second packet here. So I guess we should probably bring something around training up. This competition, there wasn't a huge amount that I trained in my technique. It's the first time that I was doing a competition where I wasn't the current NR holder for Ireland. So that was different. And it was also kind of nice because not only was I not holding the national record, it also wasn't likely that I was going to be able to break the current one. Like, the current record was 18 points in about 48 minutes, I think. And even though I'm attempting 18 here, like, even if I was to get 18 out of 18, I was guaranteed there was no chance I was getting anywhere close to that. So going into it, there's definitely a different feeling when you're like the only pressure you're noticing is on yourself. And I would say most of the time, even when I had it, you always go in being like, okay, maybe I can break it today. Maybe I'm going to one up myself. Or, especially if you're in Ireland and everybody else is going for the same thing, you're like, maybe this is going to be the day that somebody overtakes me, and that's going to come. But I found like I'm not hugely emotionally involved in like my standings against other people. I find like in the previous competition when I find out I didn't have it anymore, somebody else, Simon, had beaten it, and I kind of went, that's sad. And that lasted about 5 or 6 minutes, and then I went, cool, okay, well, next thing. But even having said that, it's still a lot nicer. The less pressure you feel like you have going into something, the easier it is to just kind of focus all in on that thing. And so this solve was definitely more fun than a lot of the ones that I've had in the past. And that was probably a lot to do with it. Also, just the fact that it's, in a different place, different country. There was enough different things to kind of distract my mind. Got my own table with my little name card on it. Like, all of that was quite fun. So I think in terms of a setup to a solve, everything was quite calm. In terms of the actual settings within the solve, annoyingly, the room wasn't that quiet, and that's something I'm still really struggling with. You'll see it if you're watching this rather than listening to it, you'll see it a little bit down the line. I just keep glancing off to the right, and that's because this was kind of the end of the lunch break. Everybody's coming back in. They're kind of talking, chatting, making noise, and in my brain, it just gets really, really irritating and very distracting. That's something that I've tried to mitigate against when I'm practicing at home. I always have like music blasting. So I'll be wearing the ear defenders, but I'll have headphones underneath, and I'll be playing all kinds of different music. Sometimes it'll be kind of chilled out, familiar stuff. Sometimes it'll be like experimental jazz, just to see if I can throw myself off. I put a lot of like parody songs in there, so songs where the lyrics are funny, and I then start trying to hone in on that. And I'm starting to get much better at just tuning out that sort of thing. But what I've found is it doesn't necessarily really translate to people's voices that much. And so I guess the next stage, if I want to improve on this, is to maybe start playing some crowd noises. So, like, actually have, instead of music through my headphones, have like people chattering, talking, all of that kind of thing, whispering and stuff, just to see if that improves things. I haven't got around to doing it because it just makes it less fun. um, I don't think I would enjoy doing a solve like that at home. And one of my big worries is motivation. Like, I will always tell people motivation's the most important thing if you want to get good at something. If you can wake up and you're just like, I want to train today, and you just go and do it, that's always going to beat any amount of having to talk yourself into it, having to reason with yourself that, you'll thank me in 10 years' time when you're world champion of something. That kind of stuff very rarely works. And usually you find the people who are already the best, even though they might not look like they're still in that stage of like enjoying what they do. A lot of the time they are, but they certainly enjoy some aspect of it. So, in my gymnastics career, all the kids that have turned out really well in terms of their competition scores, etc., and longevity, like the ones who are still doing it after multiple years, were always the ones who, first of all, enjoyed it and just loved doing it. Like, they would come every single day excited to see what they get to do today. But at the same time, eventually they got to a point where the thing that excited them was getting better. So they got to play around for a long time, and then they enjoyed getting better. And if you came and put something that made training not fun to them in that moment, there's a big chance that you would see their participation drop off, and then they don't keep at it. So, me knowing that I should train certain things because that's what's going to make me better at those certain things doesn't always equate to that's exactly what I'm going to do. Because if it makes me harder to wake up, and at this point in Portugal, I was waking up 5 a.m. every day, like, regardless of how much sleep I got, it would always be the same thing, a 5 a.m. start. And if my sleep meant that my solve was terrible, then so be it. I would just go with that. But if I was then going to make things harder and harder and harder, I don't think I would have got up. I think I would have had many more days where I just said, you know what, this isn't so important now. But having said that, that is still something that gets to me. It's probably also the fact that now that I've started going to a lot more blind only comps, it's much more likely that I don't experience this kind of people talking, people chatting, and everybody kind of knows to keep it quiet. There's hardly anyone turning up anyway. So I might actually need to think this year about, like, do I go to more big competitions with only one multi-blind attempt, just to see if I can get some more experience without like people talking, and see if I can reduce the distraction, because that would probably be quite helpful. And to be honest, in general, I think I prefer the big comps. I like trying out more different events. And there you go. You see head turning around, looking. It's, it's kind of embarrassing to watch back. Like, I start to get really annoyed looking, but again, that's just something that comes up. And if you're gonna keep doing that, you've got to just learn to get better at it. Competitions you don't get to do in ideal circumstances, and that's the difference between the best in the world and the really, really good, is that the people who are the best, even when they don't get the exact circumstances they want, they've worked out how to overcome and compensate for all the things they're not getting. If you've only ever trained in ideal circumstances and you only ever expect ideal circumstances, you're always going to find something comes up that you're going to struggle with. So that's something I'm trying to take on board, and I don't know how well, but yeah, I don't know how well anyone else does it. Does anyone else practice with distractions? We'll see. One guy, let me know. The other thing that I incorporated for the first time into this competition solve specifically was the idea of grouping my packets so that I could solve them and put them back in their place. So if you're watching this, you'll see here I've got the 2 rows of 6 together and then a third row of 6 at the back. Before, I would usually just have 3 rows going across, just kind of randomly spread out. And then when it came to solving, I'd pick up cube number 1, try and solve it, and just dump it over on the side somewhere. And then the same. So every time, cube number 2, 3, 4, just pick it up, solve it, put it on the side. And I thought that was going to be really useful in terms of there's no way I can ever pick up a solved cube. I'm only ever going to pick up the next one in the sequence because all the other ones previous to that have disappeared. So if I just reach my arm forwards and move it across, I'll always find the next cube that needs to be solved. And when I was at Irish Championships, I started noticing that a lot of the younger guys were using this technique of if they're solving 8 cubes, they would just have 4 in the front row, 4 in the back row. They'd all be touching each other. And then they would just pick one up, solve it, and put it back down in the same place, and then just pick up the next one. And yeah, I kind of couldn't believe that. I thought it was madness, but they were all seeming to do it really successfully. So then I figured, okay, maybe I'll try this out and see what happens. And actually, yeah, it's not madness. It's kind of nice. One of the things that I found is, first of all, it's quicker for reviews and stuff. I can pick up and swap the next one a little bit quicker. It's not a huge advantage, but yeah, it's not too bad. Sorry, I'm just watching myself look around like 6 times there. This is probably where the noise got super loud. Oh well, I'll learn. Anyway, what was I talking about? The packets, yeah. The big advantage was when I was actually solving them, anytime there was one that I couldn't remember, I didn't have to give up on it. So if I couldn't remember it, I could just put it back in the place, and then when I was running through it, then I could come back to it once it came to me. And very often, the more and more cubes you do, the more likely you're going to have a letter pair that is the same as another cube. And so what I would find in practice is I couldn't remember it, but later on, when I got a few cubes further down the line, one of those letter pairs would come up and I'd be like, oh yeah, that was in an earlier one. but I haven't solved that pair yet. So therefore, it must be this one that I've left out. And yeah, I vastly underestimated how useful that was going to be. And turned out in this competition, it came up twice. I think it was the number 6 and number 12, maybe, that I couldn't quite work out, and then just gave it a little break, and it came back. So that was a huge improvement. That's something that I'm definitely going to take right on through. And as I'm starting to practice bigger numbers, I've got quite into looking at 30 and 40 by this point. And that also certainly helps to save on table space. I can do it a lot with a smaller space available to me, which is going to be important for competitions. Also gives me less stress because I've had times in competitions where I'm picking up I'm solving the cube, and then I'm trying to put it down, and my arm has just got so used to putting it down on exactly the same spot that I've suddenly found I'm starting to build a tower. And like every time I go to put the cube down, I put it exactly down on the previous one. And then I start to worry, all right, well, what happens if that tower falls, knocks something, or what happens if I reach out and sort of punch one of the cubes and just have it fly across the table? That's not necessarily going to be great. Then there's the other factor that, in a lot of competitions, table space is limited anyway. So unless you're going to be one of the top guys doing like 40, 50 cubes, you're going to be sat beside somebody else. And so if you're just dumping all your cubes off to the side, you feel like either you're going to then start putting your cubes on top of them, which isn't going to be nice, not very sportsmanlike, or you're going to have like both of your cubes kind of in this communal mix, which again, probably not a huge problem. I use Yushin Kailins. Nobody else in the world, as far as I know, is going to be using these cubes. Like, I don't even know if they sell them anymore. It's very hard to find where I can buy any more of the same kind. Luckily, I've got 40 already, so the time when I actually need more is very, very far away. But yeah, it's still a worry, and like anything that's a worry in your head, no matter how irrational, is gonna mess up your times. It's gonna mess up your memory, especially. So it's just better to have things be able to be done in a calmer and more efficient manner. So that was the big one that I found really helpful for this competition, and it's what I've carried through going forwards. The other thing that I started to really focus on, so after Irish Championships, I started to notice how much quicker everybody else seems to be at dropping their memo times. And I wasn't ever really bothered about memo because I was trying to be accurate with my 3-style algs. I was trying to make sure that I was always getting them right, so I would rather have a successful solve than, get the memo right but then execute it poorly. But when I was kind of seeing how much better everybody else seemed to be, then I decided to just take a look at that and see, is there anything that I could be doing differently? Is there anything that I can be doing better when it comes to memo? And one of the big reasons that I decided to jump up and push, 30 and 40 cube attempts is I found that actually gives you a lot of reps when it comes to memoing correctly. So if you're doing 30 cubes, and let's say, for me, I've worked out I can have a maximum of about 15 seconds per cube if I want to get 5 full reviews done. And so essentially what you're doing is then 30 by 5, that's what, like 150, yeah, 150 different rounds in one go of trying to get a 15-second memo. So, pick up cube number one, pick up cube number two, 15 seconds, 15 seconds, 15 seconds. Especially if you're not good at a 15-second memo, it's very likely that you're going to have forgotten cube number one when you come to review it. So then you have to retrace all of those pieces in 15 seconds once again. And then again for number two, number three. So by just like forcing that kind of rush memo in a multi-blind solve, you're kind of just basically giving yourself 150 reps or more of fast tracing. And that was something that I looked into for this competition, and I think it helped make everything feel a lot more relaxed. Like, I think based on how frustrated I was getting in my head with all of the noise, I don't think I would have done as well if I hadn't been pushing the memo a lot higher. I'm not really sure exactly how long it's taken me. Let's watch the timer here. So that's 15 seconds already. And there's 20. So I'm giving myself way more time on this. 25 seconds. That's a 30-second memo for each one. So yeah, if I've got double the time than what I'm used to in training, that's pretty damn helpful. And that's another aspect of what I'm trying to do in my training, is to just only be competing stuff that I feel like I should be able to do really comfortably, and keep pushing the training to just get the memo times lower and lower and lower. And the solving time I'll worry about a little bit later. I've kind of started to work on it now, but at the end of this competition, I think memo was what I was really focused on, and that was the big thing that came out of it. And then one final thing that came out to be really helpful with this competition specifically, which I kind of found by accident, was paying more attention to nutrition. And you're going to have to hear me out on this one, because the stuff I'm going to say sounds obvious, but I also find that people get a bit too into this stuff or worked up about this stuff in the wrong way. So usually my approach to competitions, which I've mentioned a little bit, is like, when you're in a competition, you don't get to decide all of the exact circumstances you're going to be in. So like in this room, people talking, too much noise, not ideal, not helpful, and it's out of my control. Like, I can complain about it if I want, but really, what am I going to get? Like another extra, which is going to be even harder for everybody to coordinate if I'm lucky, or they'll just say, yeah, tough. this is the environment that we've got. And that also extends to outside the competition as well. So, if I have a hotel room that I've booked that I'm not sleeping well in, that's less inside my control than, my own bed, the kind of food that I get to eat, the kind of waking, sleeping cycle, like what time I need to go to bed. That's going to depend on my travel schedule, general energy levels throughout the day. All of that stuff is harder to keep like tight control over. And so it kind of means that your competition itself, it becomes a little bit less likely that you're going to be able to set up an ideal environment. So my thinking up till this point around nutrition especially was that I was always going to try and find better ways to improve my training. So, the whole of 2024, actually, I was kind of devoting to eating better, not necessarily in like a general health way, but in a focus way. So anything that's affecting my ability to memorize, focus, concentrate, that kind of thing, and how it affects me during the day. So if I have certain foods at night, and that means I wake up at 5 a.m. to train and I just can't do it because my brain's too fuzzy, then it doesn't necessarily mean I don't eat that thing, but I need to know when is the cutoff point. So, like, when can I have it if I really want to, so that I can still train the next day. Then I'll also look for things of like, if I eat these certain kinds of foods, what are my multi-blind results like? If I eat these certain kinds of foods, do they get better or worse? And I found the interesting thing was the more detailed I got, the less useful it became. Most of the findings were like the obvious things. So, like, too much processed stuff generally seemed to be worse. And fruit, especially, seemed to be very, very helpful. And then outside of that, later on in the year, I looked at gluten free and things, and there was definitely like certain advantages, but always with those advantages, you'd find that maybe there's a disadvantage. But I kind of got okay at figuring out nutrition for training times. When it came to competitions, I just told myself it's not even worth worrying about. So, like I've said, anything you're worried about is going to weigh on you when you're at a competition. So, I would have had no problem showing up at a competition, eating well during my training so that my ability to perform better has improved. And then when it gets to the competition, you just go, all right, cool. Eat whatever you want, drink whatever you want, have fun. That's going to keep your stress levels as low as they can be. And then you're going to get all these random circumstances thrown at you. But that doesn't matter. You'll just have to work out how to deal with that. And if you're having fun, it'll be easier to manage other stressors than if you're already stressed, because I'm not going to find the right food, I'm not going to find the right sleep, and all of that. The interesting thing is when I'm in competitions in the UK, it's 100% a guarantee it's going to be easier to find fast food right outside that competition. If you haven't done any planning for what you're going to eat, you're going to find some junk food. You're going to find a Subway, you're going to find a Burger King, you're going to find a pizza. Not hard at all. I don't think I've been anywhere where that has been the exception. In this little place in Portugal, couldn't really find any of that. There was one like little food cart outside having sandwiches, and otherwise there was a supermarket, and in the supermarket just tons of fruit, some meat, and basically that's what I went with. I bought a bunch of blueberries and I got some like just meat in general from the hot food counter, and that was a total game changer. I sort of discovered that blueberries especially seem to be the like main performance rocket fuel for me. Blueberries combined with sparkling water. I since tested at home, and yeah, it feels like in terms of topping up your energy throughout the day, especially if it's one of these big competitions where you're entered into all events, having some kind of fruit literally just does make everything better. And I know that sounds really obvious, but please take it with the caveat of everything I've said before, that, things can be obvious, but if you're not actually consciously paying attention to them, or if you're writing them off for other reasons, then that's just something you're going to overlook. But in this competition specifically, blueberries were the way to go. And since then, I found that is my afternoon events get better, the results get better if I buy an obscene amount of fruit the day before and just take that to the competition. And I found that it's easy to do, it's easy to carry, So it's a solution that kind of left me with less work and less thinking to do. As soon as I arrive, wherever I go, you just buy in fruit, you bring in that tomorrow, uh, and then you don't have to worry so much about lunches and all of that. So that was a big game changer, and that is something that I will be taking through quite a lot of the way. If you're wondering why fruit specifically, nutrition in general is one thing in terms of, there's a ton of different things you need for a balanced diet. When it comes to actual performance, though, really the only thing that matters is your blood sugar levels and your brain's access to glucose. So when you have glucose in good supply, you're able to think and focus harder. If you have too much glucose, so if you just think of too much sugar in your blood is going to be the same thing as too much sugar on your kitchen counter, when things get sticky, it becomes less efficient. So finding, energy drinks not necessarily going to be better just because they got more sugar, because the sugar content's too high. Your insulin's going to spike really huge. Eventually, that high is going to come down, and it could be pretty quickly. I'll make another video on energy drinks anyway soon, so we'll talk more about that in detail. But fruit specifically seems to be the best in terms of getting your blood sugar raised just enough, just a little bit, that you can actually concentrate and focus on what you're doing. And I really think that influenced this solve and also my blind solves. I got, I think, 1 or 2 PR blind solves in this competition as well. So that's most of the training techniques. We're into the solving now. First cube, I don't know if you can see it just off screen there. That was a DNF. I cannot remember why, but unfortunately it was so. And otherwise, it's going well so far. I'd really like to draw attention to these cool little pool noodle things that they used instead of harmonica holders. So yeah, just this like flexible foamy stuff, very quick to get on and off. That was something I hadn't seen before. I don't know if many other places use that, but pretty clever. A little bit stressful in that when I'm putting it on, you're not really sure, like, is this going to be secure? But it was still fun either way. I still think the best harmonica holders I found, first time I found them was in Glasgow. They were the magnetic ones. Seen them a few other places now. I think in Ireland they've started using them. Personally, for me, that's the very best that you can get, is just stick the harmonica holder on, and then the card you can just magnetically attach onto you. It's pretty genius, but yeah, this was a fun little different way to cover your face. Don't know what else to say. All right, here we go. We're coming up to the next... No, not the next DNF. I feel like I forgot this one. But it doesn't look like it from the solve. It looks like... no, maybe I'm wrong. Okay, I think actually it's cube number 6 that I forgot. So, this was a while ago. This one I just DNF'd. Or I left it. Who knows? We're going to find out. Hopefully you're not listening to this and you're actually watching it, and you can bear with me in suspenseful excitement. Don't know. An hour is probably too long for these. I start to really burn out on things to say. Maybe just things to say about cubing. What else can I say about Portugal? Tried my very best to see if I could speak some Portuguese. I love languages. It's one of my favorite things to do, is just try and learn. I had a Spanish friend once who, me and everyone else who knew him just knew him as the funny guy, and one day he got angry at someone and started really laying into him about how, whatever the guy had been doing, it wasn't safe. He didn't feel safe, and this is just not really acceptable way to behave in this certain situation. And we all kind of looked at each other like, oh, wow, he got really serious all of a sudden. And all of his Spanish friends said, no, he's always been serious. You just never knew how to talk to him. Like, you just didn't have the words, and he didn't have the words. So he got around it by, being funny. And that made me super curious about, like, all of the people in life where I'm missing out on actually connecting with them just because I don't speak their language. And Portuguese is one of the ones that I probably got the furthest in learning. In 2018, I think I spent about a month in Brazil, and I was dead set I was going to be fluent in Portuguese by the end of the month. Uh, didn't necessarily go the way that I planned, but I did think that I was fluent in Portuguese by the end of the month. Uh, but what it turned out was I was fluent in understanding body language. I was there as part of a conference for circus, so there was like circus performers all meeting up for like a intensive workshop camp type thing, and I was going there to deliver lectures on the brain and neuroscience and how research we've learned in the brain can help with how we train circus. A little bit like I'm trying to do with this YouTube channel, except when I go on tangents in a multi-blind podcast, whatever. Anyway, got to the end of the month in Portugal so sure that because I've been able to understand everybody the whole time, that I am able to speak Portuguese. And like I can say words, phrases, whatever. Like it's not bad, but all the time when you're in this circus conference, number one, the subject matter is restricted to the circus. So everything everybody's talking about is always related to something they're physically doing in the room. The second point about that is they're using lots of big body language and hand gestures, and that coupled with, all the words that are the same in English meant it was really easy to understand what was going on at any one time. And that just gave me this false level of confidence that was quickly swept away from me as I got into the Uber on the way to the airport to go home. The guy was chatting to me, and I was sort of smiling, nodding, speaking back. Didn't necessarily understand everything that he said, but was still able to keep a conversation going. Probably sounded like an idiot, but again, whatever. And then at one point, the guy just says to me, "Oh yeah, so you're American then?" And I was like, "No, I'm not American. I'm Irish." And as soon as I said that, he pulled the car over. We're on like a motorway, and he just sort of pulls the car over and starts shouting at me and keeps shouting. And I have no idea what this guy is saying. I have no idea what's happening. He's saying, start saying, "Give me your phone," which I don't particularly want to do because this Uber drive has just got scary. And he's just getting louder and louder. And there's like the only phrase I understood him say was, "You don't understand, but you need to understand." And then I understood nothing from then on. And then I started getting more stressed. And then I started just not even hearing whatever words he was saying. And eventually he figured out that he was going to need to make his language just simpler. And basically told me that we weren't going to the public airport. We were going to a military airport. And he had assumed I was American because it was for American soldiers, and we were just basically going entirely the wrong way. So got that resolved, and now I'm a bit more sure to check myself that I don't think I speak languages. Portugal also discovered that Brazilian Portuguese is not the same as Portuguese, and I guess it's probably a bit like learning English watching American TV shows. and then showing up to Northern Ireland or Scotland and expecting like you're going to be able to understand everybody. I understood literally nothing when I came to Portugal. And so, yeah, I was trying to speak to people when it came to competition and stuff, but most of the time they let me try, and then they would speak to me in English, which thanks guys, that was helpful, but I'll try harder for next time. Okay, we've just passed cube number 6. That was the one that I forgot, so I guess that other one's a DNF. This is kind of going to be exciting because I can't remember what my score in this was. I feel like it was maybe 14 out of 18. But in terms of the solving, like, there wasn't a huge amount to say. I actually felt like everything was turning pretty smoothly. I've since loosened off all of my cubes quite a significant amount more than what they were in this competition, and that's causing a few problems in terms of like corner twists and stuff. But I do find that I'm liking the looser feel better. What I would really ideally like is the same exact cube that I've got, but with stronger magnets so I can feel the stopping point every time. But as far as I know, I don't really know any other cube other than the Yushin Kailin that has tiles on it. And the tiles is like a deal breaker. I like the look of sticker cubes, like a lot of the kind of older guys doing speed cubing. When Rubik's cubes came out, they all had stickers. The stickerless ones didn't really show up till way into like, even when I was doing it and I started properly trying to learn in 2011, I didn't see very many stickerless cubes for a good few more years, and I just prefer what I'm used to. I like that aesthetic of stickered cubes, but what I really hate is replacing stickers, so that's a problem. And yeah, with the Yushin Kailins, you find that actually you can just have the stickered cube aesthetic without actually needing the stickers. Maybe at some point I might look into, all the stuff other people do, like can you just get a stickerless one, dye it black, and then instead of putting stickers on, maybe actually just tiled pieces of plastic, if I could figure that out. I've toyed with the idea of getting a 3D printer and just scanning in different cubes and trying to reprint them with different colors, and then again print some tiles, just glue them on instead of have them clip in like they do on the Kailins. I don't really know, but I think it's worth investigating because these cubes are good fun, but they're definitely not the best that I'm gonna get. My best three blind time was 37 seconds, and that was a very lucky scramble, but I'm not sure realistically, like how fast can I get my 3 style algs. I reckon possibly I could get all of them down to 2 seconds, but getting that 1.5 seconds or getting down to 1 second, I'm not sure whether it's possible with these cubes, or even if it is possible and it's just so much more work, I'm not sure how much time it would take me specifically. I'm already a bit older. I'm already got some issues with my hands that I'll talk about another time. There's a ton of reasons why it just might not be practical or possible for me. Even just getting below 37 seconds in general, that's already a lot quicker than I ever thought possible. So I'm just going to have to hope for another really lucky scramble. Yeah, and here's another part where the stress builds up in my solves. I don't know if anyone else does this, but as I get closer and closer to the last cube, I just start to imagine a huge crowd of people gathering around me, which is kind of silly. But I think maybe it comes back to the first competition I did in England when I took off the blindfold. I was surrounded by people, and I'm not sure why. I guess people didn't know me, and I did manage the Irish NR by that point. But I don't know who would have been keeping track. But I was just surrounded by people, and that kind of shocked me. And then for some reason, every single time, like even if I already know it hasn't gone well, I'm just imagining like there's a whole crowd of people surrounding me, and that stresses me the hell out. Always take the blindfold off, and yeah, I'm lucky if there's one person there to stop the stopwatch. Uh, but I'm not quite sure what the mindset strategy is going to be in order to deal with that. So just coming up to the last cubes here. I'm pretty sure this one is another one where I forgot, but thanks to my new strategy, I go back to the number 6, and then I think I remember both of them. Not sure if I execute them both correctly, or even if either of them. How many have I got wrong now? 1, 2. Yeah, okay. I think I just DNF them anyway. If this is going to be 14 out of 18. Not long now to find out. Bit too long when you've run out of things to say. But all I will say is these will be continuing regardless of your support. Thank you very much if you've been watching it. If there's anything you want me to talk about, let me know. I'll think about it. But yeah, I'm still having fun doing it. I'm still going to keep recording stuff. And also just forces me to watch this back another time, which is always helpful for giving me ideas. Usually when I finish the competition, I'll watch it back kind of straight away. I'll see, especially with the mistakes, see where the mistakes are. In these rounds, I kind of get to look more at the more subtle things. So like, what's my face doing? In this attempt, like I can see I'm biting my nails a lot, so there's something uncomfortable going on in my brain that I can't quite figure out. Obviously, the noise was a thing. I could see that happening, but in general, get to notice, I'm sitting a lot more calmly than I was during the Irish Championships. There was a lot of stress going on there, and like physically just looked uncomfortable in the chair. So yeah, let me know if you're interested in that stuff as well. So that stuff that I do for other athletes is they'll send me videos, and I'll be able to dissect like what kind of unconscious cues are going on in their body that might be causing them to act in a certain way, and that might be helping to help or hinder their performance. If you've watched this far and that's of interest to you, then yeah, send me a message. Put the word Portugal somewhere in it, and I'll do that for free. You can send me an average of 5. I will analyze it for you and send you like a little report just around your kind of posture, facial expressions, the way that you're moving your hands, etc., to see if there's anything that I reckon you could look at that could be improved. All right, there we are. There is 14 out of 18, 10 points. That's it for Portugal. I'll be back with the next one. There'll be a bit of a gap in time. Like I said, I lost all my souls for 2024. But I think next one I've got is Dublin 2025. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you there.